today somebody asked me a question, what, are you going to retire? I said, no, I mean, every engineer I knew died in the control room. So, no.
That just adds to the vibe, right, of the control room. Okay. Welcome back to another WSDG booth talk. I am very pleased and honored that we have with us today Elliot Scheiner. And not to use the L word, but I am a little intimidated. So by your, I'll say it, legendary status, you've worked with a lot of artists that I look up to, that I love. You've created a lot of sonic environments that I relate to, that I escape to, and I appreciate the art that you've put into this world. I'll just start with that.
Thank you.
So I wanted to talk with you a little bit because we don't know each other very well, and I'd like to get to know you better. So I'd like to ask a little bit about, I mean, I know my story. I know what drives me. How did you get here today? Like, what did you pick up that you couldn't put down in your life? And what was that spark?
Well, it was music, obviously. But when I started, I didn't think about that. You know, I just worked every day. And I didn't think about where I'd be down the line. You know, it was learning and working, and that's all I wanted to do.
You couldn't not do it.
No. And in fact, today somebody asked me a question last week, what, are you going to retire? I said, no, I mean, every engineer I knew died in the control room. So, no.
That just adds to the vibe, right, of the control room. Where geographically are you? West Coast, right?
No, East Coast.
East Coast, okay.
Yeah.
And what was the first studio you were in?
That's mine.
Yes.
Yeah.
What a lovely place.
Yeah.
What was the first studio you interacted with?
A&R was the first studio, and I worked for Phil Ramone. And
how did you start out working for Phil Ramone?
Because my uncle was a pretty famous trombone player, and he was friends with Phil. And I told Phil, after listening to Sgt. Pepper, I said, this is what I want to do. I told my uncle. And he immediately introduced me to Phil, and we got along great, and he gave me a job starting the next day.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Show up at 9 or 10
Show
or
up
whatever.
at 8.
8, okay.
Yeah. And what I didn't know is that they bought you breakfast. You know, it was a grand life. You know, it was really, really great.
Yeah. Learning everything you could learn, and sitting at the console.
Well, in those days, Phil taught me everything. So it was huge for me. I mean, he had so much knowledge.
Great. And so, obviously, at a certain point, you started maybe doing your own sessions, right?
I did. About 2 years after, I did Moondance for Van Morrison. And that taught me everything I needed to know. And it was a great experience. So, and from there on was a lot of other bands.
How did you learn how to trust your ears?
I never thought about it.
Okay. So you did. There was no disconnect.
No, you know, I listened more to what the artist said. You know, if they had no problems, then it was always good. So I guess my ears were okay, I think.
Okay. What's a strange request you've gotten during a session? Maybe we'll leave it to sonically.
It was prior to a session.
Okay.
We're doing a band from Australia, and this producer wanted to make it something like they'd never seen before. So I wasn't sure how to do it, but I came up with this idea of putting all the amps on stanchions, on scaffolds. So the bass was here, the guitar was here, drums were down below. All the guys were down below.
All in the live room.
Yeah, but there were these stanchions that the amps went on, and it looked great. It really looked great, but it was horrible. You know, they never said anything. Nobody ever said anything. We just worked with it. It was pretty bad.
Sonically.
Yeah.
It looked good, sounded
It
bad.
looked great. Yeah.
Okay. Did that end up on the record?
Yeah, it did. But I worked with the band. They did Summertime Blues. Old band. And they worked out on a pier in New York. We recorded the band playing towards New Jersey. So I'd have the reverb going over the river and coming back. Yeah. And it was odd. It was
Okay.
good.
How do you know when you're done with a session?
You never do.
How do you mean?
Well, you go in with an idea of what you're doing, like with Steely Dan. Go in, I know we're doing tracks. And when you thought you were finished, it was like they were just starting. You know?
Just getting
Yeah,
going.
you just said no. I never do.
In terms of a little bit of your background, I know you have a connection with Berkeley
Yeah.
School of Music. You teach there?
I used to, yeah.
Okay. And you would teach,
What I do, yeah.
right, okay, mixing, tracking,
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff. How has that experience, if it has, influenced how you approach a session? Or is it really just a sharing of knowledge?
Yeah, it's more a sharing of knowledge and giving a student the idea of what I've gone through and what it took to get here. You know, what went through my mind with what I recorded. You know, like I'd worked with all these great bands like Steely and like the Eagles and Foo Fighters, and you know, and each one is so different. And like the Eagles, I spent like I did a live record with them, which was after they had broken up, came back, and that took months of 7 days a week doing what we had to do. When they did their next live, their only studio record after that, it was years.
Years?
It was years. When I did Gaucho, that was 2 years. When I did Asia, that was almost 2 years. You know, long periods of time. And it's according to the people you work with. You know, they were so nitpicky.
Perfectionists.
Yeah, and you could hear something from them and not know what they were talking about. You'd hear a take on playback. It's great, really great. And then you find out, no, this is terrible. You know, so it was hard to figure out why. Never got a reason.
So it was less translating and more enacting, executing.
Yeah.
Because you found that they were not able to relay that information to you.
They could have, it would have taken a bit of time. No, it's what they're hearing.
Yeah,
It's just different.
yeah. You're a facilitator at that point.
I was a pilot. Yeah.
This is where we want to go. Take us there.
Yeah.
So obviously you've probably worked in a lot of studios, right?
Yes.
What is one of the first things you look for in a studio when you go to mix there? Like, you got a new project coming up. This is where we're recording. You come into the room for the first time. What are you scanning for?
You know, you always go to some place you know.
Always.
Always. You know, I've never actively sought out a new studio. I've been to a studio where I hadn't worked and heard what was coming out of it. Went, oh my God, this is great. You know, so I don't look for anything.
Gotcha. Are you typically consulted on the location of a session? Like
No,
Elliot?
I demand it.
Okay. So it's part of the way you want to work,
Yeah.
right? We want to do a project with you. Okay, where
I'll
are we
tell
working?
you where.
Right. And what is that decision based on, other than just knowing the room? Is it based on if it's a band or a solo artist or the instrumentation, or just where you happen to be in the world at that moment?
No, it's not that. It's like lately, I'm used to this one room in New York, Rhinebeck, New York, and I want to be there all the time. I mean, I did a project there about a year ago, and what came out was amazing.
So this is your room, right?
And that's for mixing, yeah.
For mixing.
Yeah. Where'd you get that from?
Hopefully from you.
It's got windows.
Daylight is important,
Yeah.
right? How much time do you spend in this room, average?
I'm there every day.
I see that this is a surround. Type.
Oro.
Oro. Okay.
Yes.
For an immersive type mix.
Yeah.
Is this in your house?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's easy. That's a nice commute.
Oh, yeah. I could do it anytime.
Do you bring clients into this room?
I never have, but I work with Fish, and Trey wanted to come up there and see it. So a whole entourage of cars pulled into the driveway, and there was Trey.
But otherwise, you typically will do a mix
Yeah,
and fold it down and send it out.
You know, if it's an immersive, I'll have the artist come and listen to it when it's done.
How many iterations will you do? Stereo, immersive, versions?
What do you mean by how many?
I don't know. Maybe, is it always your recommended mix, or are there ones that you're like, well, this one has more bass, this one has more punch?
They always do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What's a project that stands out to you that you've done recently that you're proud of?
This Madeline Perrault record.
Which one is it?
Madeline
Madeline?
Perrault.
Perrault.
Yeah.
Right.
Pretty
It's out.
amazing. Yeah, it came out.
Right. So you would like to get into more jazz?
Yeah.
Instrumental jazz, vocal jazz?
Any kind.
All of it? All of it?
I love some of the women singers in jazz. Like Madeline is primarily a jazz artist, and her voice, I would say it's like the closest thing, phrasing-wise, to Billie Holiday. You know, and it's like a magic. You know, she's not trying to do it; she does it. It's there.
Yeah.
She just does it. You know, so that part's great.
Do you find that? How do you make her vocals sing in the mix? Like, is there a special technique, or is it the less you do, the better it is?
It was always that.
Yeah.
Yeah, always that.
What are you working on right now?
I'm doing some immersive stuff.
Okay. For?
Can't tell you.
Can't tell. You have to kill me.
Yeah.
All right, but we should look for it in the coming months.
Yes.
We're excited to see it.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, you know, I'm here because John asked me to be here. And I've been a big fan of John's forever. And when I saw what he did at Berkeley, I mean, it blew my mind. So I'm a
Excellent.
big fan.
Well, that's a two-way street. Can we talk a little bit about your connection to Japan? You're one of the only
Oh, I'm the only one
Americans that
that
has gotten...
received the Japanese
Yeah.
Audio Society.
How did that come about? That's so fascinating to me because they're very specific to what they're doing.
It's really hard to explain because I remember going over for the first time to do a date, and there were people waiting in the parking lot at the studio to meet me, and I get there and they escort me up. And when I got escorted up, there were about 150 people that wanted me to sign albums. You know, and looking at this, pretty stupid, but you know, I don't know how it happened. I think mainly because they liked the records I did.
Any record in particular that
It was always Steely.
Steely Dan?
Yeah.
Well, they kind of epitomize the band in the studio. Like, it's hard to overcome the bar that they've set.
Yeah.
And you had a lot to do with that, so
Yeah, it was
I think
fun
that
for me.
recognition is as well earned.
Thank you.
So very cool. Elliot, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining me. Everybody give it up
Thank
for
you.
Elliot. Legend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.